Hi, I'm Sarah Cowgill, along with Andrew Moran, Jeff Charles, Jim Fight, and Graham Noble. And this is the Conservative Five, Liberty Nation's online TV news program. Perpetrators and purveyors of fake news have banded together in the run-up to midterm elections. Whether attacking a candidate who has a good chance of winning or stirring up a race war, well, hit-and-run journalism is in full swing in the good old US of A. Sure, people can make mistakes when it comes to reliable sources, especially when the story could be explosive. But are media outlets going with the whole ends justify the means approach? All right, this might be a risky move. But Graham, give us maybe the filtered version of your take on this whole mess.
Well, I think to a certain extent, Sarah, yes, your comment about the ends justifying the means is definitely something that let's call them the left-wing establishment media, that's their philosophy, if you like, what Jeff often refers to as media activists. And certainly, because they are definitely pushing without question for one particular political outcome, one particular ideological outcome. And like most people on the left, they do actually believe that the ends justify the means. Whatever you need to do to achieve your political and cultural goals, that's what you do. And they've never shied away from it. But of course, there's two different types of fake news. There is the intentional fake news, and then I guess what you might call the unintentional fake news. The intentional fake news is what you see mostly a lot of that on social media, coming from just kind of ordinary people or, pundits, political observers, activists, these kind of people. And, let's not pretend that it only happens on the left, because it happens on the right as well. People will go on social media and they'll publish all kinds of outlandish stories. And of course, the reason why those stories survive and make the rounds is because, and we all know this, it's what's called confirmation bias. So many people will just seek out information, statistics, news reports that back up what they believe or what they want to believe is the truth. And of course, let's face it, most people do not do their research, and that's the problem. And that brings us nicely to the other type of fake news, which is the kind of the unintentional fake news, if you like, which is what mostly the establishment media peddles in. And this is because they don't do their due diligence as journalists. They don't do their research. I mean, look at the whole Russia collusion story. That was just such a big story. It was based on almost nothing at all other than gossip and circumstantial evidence. But did these journalists really look into it before they started publishing anything about the Steele dossier and all that? Did they do their research? Did they ask the hard questions? Where are you getting this information? What is the evidence of links between?
Well, did they even care?
Trump's campaign? Well, that's well, there you go, Sarah. Good question, because no, they didn't care entirely, because they saw that story and they thought, wow, this is fantastic. This just makes Trump look like some kind of master criminal. And so we're going to go ahead and run with this. So not only did they not do their research, but perhaps, maybe, I'm speculating here, perhaps they decided, well, we're not going to do the research because otherwise we might find out that this story is based on nothing. So yeah, it's an ongoing problem, fake news, and we're still dealing with it, and it's probably only going to get worse.
Now, just imagine if you got the unfiltered Graham J. Noble view there.
Oh yeah, you wouldn't want that.
Well, that's why we have.
No, you got to look at
we look through it through a different lens, and whether Graham's vernacular fits our narrative is sometimes questionable.
We're missing
Andrew, Andrew, come on. What's going on? I mean, do Canadian journalists and, is this just us? I mean, are we just falling that flat that we just chase anything?
Oh, no, absolutely not. I mean, up here in Canada, we just elected a new conservative leader for the party, Pierre Poilievre, which you can see my article on libertynation.com. And the media's just been pouncing him and attacking him. And just actually, just have it into US news, CBC recently ran a hit piece saying that Ben Shapiro is an extremist and he's attracting all these people and turning them into an extremist. So no, I mean, our news networks here, our newspapers, we lean pretty much left. It's very rare to find a conservative news outlet. So overall, the left it ramps up its attacks on conservatives and anyone right of Justin Trudeau.
To go back to Graham's intro into the subject, do you think that the recent BYU story that went viral everywhere, do you think that was an intentional plant of a story, or do you think there was some validity to it?
See, I was actually going to use that story as an example to call more attention to the gotcha moment thing, which Graham kind of touched on. There is a lot of intentional fake news and, malicious reporting, but there's also just a lot of lazy journalism. So, not looking well into the matter. But also I think sometimes even beyond just the laziness, sometimes you get these situations where people, they see what looks like a gotcha moment and they get real excited and they just can't wait to jump on it. And I think that's what happened with the BYU scandal.
Well, first, I want to say that I feel personally attacked by Graham Noble when he mentions people on the right on social media spreading fake news, because I've been known to post a satirical tweet every now and then, and people will believe that it's true, even if I tell them that it's satire. And that goes to what Graham was saying about confirmation bias. Some of the tweets, now I will admit that it is hard to post satire in 2022 because everything's already so ridiculous, but there is an element of confirmation bias. If I post a satirical tweet against the left, most people will, by now they know, but there's still a good chunk of people that don't get it, that think it's real. And that's the world that we're living in. But I think it's also important to note that when it comes to fake news and the activist media, it's about what they report, but it's also about what they choose not to report. Now, you guys may have heard of about 3 or 4 days ago, there was a man in North Dakota, 41 years old, who ran an 18-year-old over and killed him over a political dispute, for politically motivated reasons. And he confessed to this, that it was political. Local reports reported on it. Conservative outlets reported on it. I just checked before we started this broadcast, and CNN and CBS finally picked the story up, but it happened about 4 days ago. And from what I've seen, no other major mainstream news outlet has picked up on the story. Now, we all would know what would happen if the party affiliations were reversed, right? I mean, Biden just gave a speech labeling Republicans as extremists, and the guy that killed this other guy said that he did so because he was part of a Republican extremist group. We know what would have happened if that were Trump and the situation were reversed. They would have blown that up 5 minutes after it happened. So that's another way in which the activist media promotes false narratives.
I think it's also important to point out too that fake news can just consist of the act of being stenographers for the federal government. I mean, all this whole fake news and typing of the government says it's nothing new. I mean, the incubator baby story in Iraq during the 1990s. You had the WMDs in Iraq. So journalism also classifies just pretty much what the government says. A lot of people say, "Oh, just report on the facts and what's being said," but you do that, you also risk the risk of just being a propaganda outlet for the federal government. And one more thing too, I would like to say, I was going to mention about Ron Paul. If you talk about fake news, you go back to 2008 and the constant attacks against Ron Paul and his supporters by Fox News, CNN, CBS, all those networks, they just completely hammered him and his supporters. I remember there's one segment on CBS, there was a straw poll and Ron Paul came in second. It was a huge thing. And the whole press was talking about, oh, look who came in fifth, Doug Gilmore or Governor Gilmore. What? Wow. But completely ignoring what Ron Paul, that he was in second place, that thing. I think it was Jon Stewart. He called him the 13th floor of U.S. politics. So I think fake news is nothing new. It's been around for a long, long time.
Well, and also we have to remember that unfortunately, there are certain individuals, just, for want of a better term, regular people. They're not always regular people, though. Sometimes they're celebrities who have malicious intent. And they'll start a fake news story either for publicity reasons, but also to try to score political points, try to try to make the people who they don't agree with politically out to be the bad guys. I mean, for instance, coming back to the BYU story, who actually started that? Who was the originator of that story? It was a woman who is well known for being very kind of politically vocal, and also I would go so far as to say Guilt has a documented history of some very racist, i.e. anti-white social media posts. And then, look at our dear friend Jussie Smollett, same thing there. I mean, he created that hoax in Chicago with apparently the fanatical Trump supporters roaming, the streets of Chicago at 2:00 in the morning, who of course were big Empire fans. So they recognized Jussie Smollett immediately. And, but he created that. He planned that, he created it. And okay, a lot of people say, well, he was doing it for publicity reasons to give his career a kind of to try to restart his failing career.
We could go on and on and on and on. We could make a 2-hour show out of this.
There's a malicious element to it is basically the bottom line there. Yeah.
But we got to go. We got to wrap it up. The lack of responsible reporting from broadcasters being too quick to render judgment based on feelings, to outlets seeking only sources that will fit their chosen narrative. I mean, how is the real truth getting to the American public? Thanks, panel. Check your sources, please, and thank you. That's it for our Conservative 5 panel today. Check out our other C5 shows and segments on your favorite video platform. YouTube, Vimeo, Rumble, we're on them all. As well, Liberty Nation has its own Roku channel where you can see all of our TV productions. Thanks for tuning in, and remember to surf on over to libertynation.com. Join us on the member zone, just $17.76 for the whole year. Special thanks to our fantastic editor and post coordinator, Frank Diorio. I'm Sarah Cowgill, filling in for Lisa K. Donner. Thanks for joining us today. This has been a production of libertynation.com, where truth is making a comeback.